Hey guys, last night Rachel and I shared with you guys the story of how we met as we began our relationship series, as we're looking at relationships for the month of February. This message was from last night, and we talked about seven godly requirements for every dating or pre-marriage relationship. So check out the video, leave us a comment below, and let us know what you think. Last week we finished up our series in God-sized confidence. And this week, we're starting a new series about relationships. And Rachel is going to be joining me for the month up here on stage as we share with you guys some stuff about relationships. Because we know that you're in the age of thinking or starting to date. And so we're going to share some funny stories, some of our experiences, as well as what the Bible has to say specifically about dating, because guess what? Dating is not a sin, all right? That might be not good to say in a Baptist church, but dating is not a sin. It's okay to date. But how we're going to start is we just want to tell you guys the story about how me and Rachel met. Some of y'all may know it, but some of y'all may have no idea anything about how we met. So it goes like this. Once upon a time. No, I'm just kidding.
You're so stupid.
Yeah. I moved to Lima, Ohio to do an internship at a ministry called Teens for Christ. Some of you guys know what that is, some of you don't. But I moved up here to Lima, Ohio in 2011 to do an internship with Teens for Christ. That's kind of where it all started. 2 or 3 years into the internship. Was it 2 or 3? I don't know.
I have no
Somewhere
clue.
around there. We decided that we were going to go visit the college that we actually was attending online, and they had a banquet that week, and we actually decided that we were going to go to the banquet. And so a group of guys that were with us decided they were going to ask some on-campus girls to go to this banquet. I don't even know what it was called.
Our spring banquet.
Just
we
a
just
spring
have it every
banquet,
year. It's
yeah.
kind of like a Christian school homecoming, but for college Christian school.
Yeah, so we decided we were going to go. I was the guy who didn't ask anybody because I'm not that guy. I'm the guy who slides into people's DM. That's what I did.
Technically, the only person who asked somebody was David Thompson.
Okay, yeah.
And that was me.
Yeah, David Thompson asked her, and then she said yes, and brought some other girls, right?
Yeah, a lot
Basically.
of other girls and a couple of guys for some
Yeah.
other girls. Yeah.
So we attended the banquet. Actually, the picture with the orange tie is our first picture together that we took at that banquet. I was wearing a camo dress shirt with a black vest and a hunter's orange tie. And she just thought I was hilarious. And so we took a picture together, and that was it. We never talked again for like 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
Like 2 years. And then we reconnected through Snapchat.
Okay, no, Michael was creepy. This is like what I don't recommend, guys. He literally somehow got my Snapchat and added me, and I was stupid. Girls don't add people you don't know on Snapchat or any social media.
Whoa. But that's how we got together.
I don't recommend it, though. 10 out of 10, don't recommend.
All right. So anyways, so we connected through Snapchat. We started Snapchatting. She had an assignment at school where she had to, what was the assignment?
So it was for my psychology class, and we had to give up like any form of social media and like a texting communication. So the only way we could communicate is over phone. So if someone texted us, we had to respond by calling them pretty much, but we couldn't be on like Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. What else was, I think that was the only popular things.
Yeah.
There's just some college form of communication where it's like anonymous. I forget what it's called. Yak, something like that.
So anyways, so
Couldn't do
she
that.
was on a social media fast, basically. And so I had to actually call her to talk to her. And I called her and we talked for like...
No, but I like told my best friend to like, you have to tell Michael like that I'm not gonna respond.
She didn't want me to lose interest.
Yeah, because I was like, but also it was that day I was like, if he doesn't call me, then like I'm done with him. Like I'm moving on. This is stupid. This is not worth it. So I had my friend at the time text him from my phone and be like, hey, Rachel has this assignment. She cannot, like, text you or anything. So, like, you're going to have to call her within, like, the next, like, I think it was a 48-hour thing that we had to do it for. I don't know.
Yeah. So I called her. We talked for, like, what, 4 hours? 3 hours?
It was
I
so
don't know.
long.
It was a long time.
It was during finals
We
week,
talked
too.
a long time. And then it just kind of progressed from there.
Yeah.
She was getting ready to come home from college, and I tried to convince her to, on her way home from college, make a detour, come down here to Lima and see me, and then go home.
No.
That didn't work. She was not having that. She actually called her mom, freaking out about it.
Well, he tried to meet me in Toledo, and that's literally on my way home because I lived in Detroit, Michigan. And so we went to school in Pennsylvania, so like it hits right through Toledo. He's like, we can go to Chick-fil-A, and I literally called my mom. I said, Mom, like, use your mom as a cop-out. I don't care. I was like 21 at the time, I think. I don't know, 22. And
So she ditched me
said no.
and said no that time. And then the following week, we actually went on a date. We went to see a movie, Pitch Perfect 2, right?
Yeah.
And then we went to Chick-fil-A and ate the Lord's chicken. And then we just started seeing each other every weekend. And then I proposed to her. So we started dating in like May or June. And then I proposed to her in October. Some of you might have been there. Were any of you there that night?
Staley's.
Okay.
Some of them?
Not these Staley's.
No, none of these Staley's.
No.
Wow.
Man, we've been
Oh
here.
my
Ooh,
gosh.
we're getting old.
That's crazy.
Was she? Okay. Jamie, were you a student then?
Yeah, he was.
Oh, wow. Oh, golly, man.
Was
That's
that
making me
your
feel
senior
old.
year?
Probably. Yeah. Yeah, so we got engaged in October. We got married the following May. Almost called off the wedding at one point.
Yeah.
That was an experience. But yeah, and then we've been married for 3 years, almost 3 years.
I
Four?
think this is our
Almost
fourth
4?
year. I don't know.
Yeah, almost 4. We'll be married
know.
4 years, May 28th. We'll be married 4
Gosh,
years,
this just took a
May 28th. So as long as you guys have been in high school, some of you, or will be in high school, that's how long
Cass
we've been
could be
married.
the only one, right?
So yeah, anybody have any questions about our story about dating? Anybody? What was the mishap? Oh, man. I kind of forget, to be honest. I think what it was is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because this is I don't remember these kind of things. It was during Converge, and I think I was very focused on Converge and doing stuff for Converge that I neglected her. And then she responded from that neglect, like, not in a way that I wanted her to respond. And so then I was, like, freaking out, and, like, I was the one that was, like, thinking about calling it off. I think that's how it went.
Yeah. He was a jerk, is what he was. Like, he didn't communicate at all, saying, like, I'm going to be busy from this time. Like, I had no clue Converge was going on. Like, no clue. And he just stopped responding to me. And I was like, what the heck is wrong? And yeah, it did not go well, and I had my first true panic anxiety attack where I could not breathe. And yeah.
Jace? Say what? Because that's how men like me do that. You know, us shy men who aren't outgoing and don't want to get rejected face to face. We just slide into people's DMs, send them a Snapchat. You know, that's what we do. Terrence, you have a question? What? It's not a creep. It's the new 20th century version of
Pursuing.
of writing letters. So, yeah. I was being a creep and wanted a girlfriend.
We were friends on Facebook. So, like, we were already friends on Facebook and stuff like that. So, like, we still had
It wasn't like she was some random person.
connection,
I still knew of her.
But, yeah.
Yeah. So that's it in a nutshell. So with that, we want to share with you guys specifically 7 things. Matter of fact, Kennedy, you want to come up here? And
You're
get this,
speaking with us, didn't you know?
since I'm sitting. Yeah, you can. You can just pass. You don't have to do it just groups. But these are 7 things that godly relationships require. We know that you guys are in that stage of life where you're dating. You might be asking a girl out through her DM. You might be talking to her face to face if you're a man more than me. But you're in that you're in that stage of life where you're looking for a romantic relationship before marriage. And specifically, the best book for relationship advice is Ruth, the book of Ruth. It's a really small book right after Judges in the Bible. And so everything we share with you guys is going to be right out of the book of Ruth. We have 7 helpful truths regarding dating or engagement relationships. And so you should see these 7 things in a healthy before marriage relationship, and hopefully after marriage, but specifically during the dating or courting or getting to know each other, whatever you want to call that process. These 7 things should exist. And so if we pick up in the book of Ruth, specifically chapter 1, verses 1 through 4, it says, "In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land. So a man from Bethlehem in Judah, together with his wife and 2 sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab. The man's name was Elimelech. His wife's name was Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem, Judah, and they went to Moab and lived there. Now Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. They married Moabite women, one named Orpah and another named Ruth. After they lived there about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and Naomi was left without her 2 sons and her husband." And so we pick up in the book of Ruth, specifically after the time of the Judges. And if you don't know anything about the book of Judges, or maybe even that part of the Bible, the book of Judges was a time when there was a lot of different things going on. There was murder, mayhem, chaos. On top of that, Ruth is the widowed daughter-in-law of her widowed mother-in-law. And so unlike the movies, this wasn't a pretty picture. But God's in control to bring about the right person for us at just the right time. For me, it was like when I was, before we got married, there was a lot of things going on in my life personally that was making me question, like, God, are you going to bring me the right person? Or making me wonder, like, am I in your will? Is there somebody for me that you have picked specifically? And now granted, I didn't sit on my thumbs and expect, that person just to show up. I was persistent in looking for somebody. But even before we got married, there was a time of like, I didn't know where I was going to work. I didn't know where I was going to live. During that time, we were, there might have been the opportunity there, or we might have called off the wedding. And so there was a lot of things that were going on that was making life difficult. And so the first thing that I've noticed with my life with the book of Ruth is that godly relationships require faith. Godly relationships require faith. You have to trust that God is in control. You have to trust that God is going to bring the right person at the right time. Now, that doesn't mean you sit back and just watch the world from a distance. But I mean, as a man, you should still be pursuing girls and deciding, are they a fit for you or not? But you have to trust that God has it figured out. He's going to let you know when the right person is coming into your life.
You done? Okay. And girl at a time, not girls multiple at the same time. But then in the next part of it, I think it's so beautiful because it just shows like the obedience of Ruth. And like she didn't have to stay with her mother-in-law. Her mother-in-law like pretty much was trying to force her to go back because she wanted a better life for her. And we'll see that in Ruth 1:6-18. I'm just going to read it all. Michael told me not to, but I'm going to because it explains it so well. But then she arose with her daughter-in-laws to return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the fields that Moab, the Lord, had visited his people and given them food. So she set out from the place where she was with her 2 daughters-in-law, and they went on their way to return to the land of Judah. But Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go, return each of you to her mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant you that you may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband." Then she kissed them, and they lifted up her voices and wept. And they said to her, "No, we will return with you to your people." But Naomi said, "No, turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Have I yet sons in my womb that may become your husbands? Turn back, my daughters. Go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. And if I should say I have hope, even if I should have a husband this night and should bear sons, would you therefore wait till they were grown? Would you therefore refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, for it is exceedingly bitter to me for your sake that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me." Then they lifted their voices and wept again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, and Ruth clung to her. And she said, "See, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law." But Ruth said, "Do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For where you will go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there will I be buried. May the Lord do to me and more also, if anything, death departs me from you." And when Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more. I just thought it was so beautiful and elegant, like literally in how they worded it. Like she was so obedient and she was so kind. Like she did not disrespect her mother-in-law. And like, sorry. First of all, I'm really nervous up here, but I also feel like Lizzie McGuire in the Lizzie McGuire movie. Like on the stage, like this is what dreams are made of, okay? But I'm very nervous to be up here, so my brain is going at like 1,000%, and Cody Ray is not happy, but happy at the same time. Lori, that's okay. Okay. But yeah, going back, it just shows how she was so respectful to her mother-in-law, and that's what we need to be looking for in the person that we're dating and the person that we want to marry, because your goal of dating shouldn't be just to date around. Like your goal of dating is for marriage. It's not to just hem-haw and be like, "Oh, I like her, I like him, so we're gonna do this," and not think about the future. So like when I was thinking of examples, like I couldn't think of positive thing, not between us, like I thought of positives, but like in your age and stage right now, like if you see your boyfriend or girlfriend disrespecting their mom especially, that's usually how they're going to treat you, no matter what. If you see them like smack-talking them and back-talking them and just being disrespectful, they're going to treat you like that one day, even if they're not right now. If you see them like telling them no consistently and just like truly disobeying them, like, is this, okay, I won't tell my brothers this is on YouTube, but there's a big difference between me and my brothers and how we acted growing up. Like my brothers were so disrespectful to my parents and they just did whatever they wanted, and like they've had issues in their relationships and stuff like that, but I always was like upfront, black and white, this is how I am, and if my parents told me no, I didn't do it. Like I was so scared of the consequences that were going to come from it. And I think that's helped us. Like I pushed back on Michael a little bit, but for the most part, like I'm scared of the consequences that will come from it. Why are you looking at me like that?
No,
And then if you talk disrespectfully to them, they'll do that to you, and it could turn out to be like later on, it could be like verbal abuse, and you just don't want that in your life, like whatsoever.
Yeah, so I agree with her. It's like how you're seeing your boyfriend or girlfriend treat their parent of the opposite gender is usually how they're going to end up treating you. I mean, I can guarantee you 95% of the time, I've noticed in my own life, me and my mom are not real close. We're not the sit and talk and have a conversation and share our heart. And so I've noticed that I've had to learn how to do that with Rachel. Because I wasn't that way with my mother. If I was naturally that way with my mother, hopefully that would have just transitioned into my relationship with Rachel, but I wasn't that way. And so I've had to learn, how to sit and have those conversations, share my heart, communicate to her to where I'm not speaking to her, but I'm sharing my thoughts with her that we can come to decisions together.
Yeah. Sorry, I was going to say more, but that's okay.
That's fine.
Okay. But the positive things that you want to look for is you want to see them being respectful. You want to see them like being like, okay, mom, okay, dad, when they ask you to do things, if it's matching up. If it goes against biblical context, if they're asking you to do like inappropriate things, then that's okay to say no. But like if they're asking you to do your chores and stuff like that, just get it done. Like, what's the issue? It will help you keep your house cleaner when you're older. But like just simple things, just saying yes and doing it, it makes things so much easier and will make your marriage and your dating relationship so much easier because you're already giving then. Like you're giving to your parents and you're going to have to give to your spouse, like in every area of your life. It's not 50-50 ever. It's like 100% obedience all the time.
All right, let's go ahead and turn over to Ruth chapter 2, verses 1 through 7. Now Naomi had a relative on her husband's side, a man of standing from the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. Ruth, the Moabite, said to Naomi, "Let me go to the fields and pick up the leftover grain behind anyone in whose eyes I find favor." And Naomi said to her, "Go ahead, my daughter." So she went out, entered a field, and began to glean behind the harvesters. As it turned out, she was working in a field belonging to Boaz, who was from the clan of Elimelech. And so here we meet Boaz. And Boaz was from Bethlehem, and Naomi meets Boaz. That's the gist of this section of Scripture. And so thirdly is godly relationships require godly attraction. And when I say godly attraction, that's not just a physical attraction. There's other attractions besides physicality, besides how she or he looks. Ruth was interested in Boaz because Boaz was a leading godly man. Boaz was attracted to Ruth, who was a godly, humble woman. And so we want to be attracted to people for the right reasons. And that's usually, do they love Jesus? Can you see specifically in that person that they love Jesus with every ounce of their being? My grandma always told me, run as hard as you can after God. And when you see somebody running beside you, then that's the person who you should pursue a relationship with. And so I would encourage you, have some godly attraction, not just physical attraction.
Yeah, one of the things that, like when I was thinking about this, and I never wanted to get married. Like I was set on being an independent woman and do my own thing, and I wanted to become a doctor and all this stuff. And when me and Michael started talking, it was like literally like our second or third date, and I was like, oh crap. Like he loves the Lord and he's serving the Lord, and I just loved it. And it was cool because he just radiated like God, and he also pushed back at me because I'm a strong, independent woman. And it was like literally God couldn't have like planned it any more perfect because of that. Like I wasn't chasing guys, I was literally chasing the Lord, and it literally just, he plopped into my phone.
For me, it was like, number one, she's physically attractive. Number two, I was attracted to the fact that I felt like she saw a bigger picture than me. I felt like I saw the things she didn't see. And when I say picture, I'm talking about life, I felt like I saw the things that she didn't see, and she saw the things that I didn't see. And I love that because I felt like she completed me. I know that's kind of a cliche, cheesy phrase.
You don't realize it until you're in the moment. Like, you won't find the person that truly completes you. Everyone says it, but, it's real.
Yeah. All right, next one is found in Ruth chapter 2, verses 8 and 9. So Boaz said to Ruth, "My daughter, listen to me. Don't go down and glean in another field, and don't go away from here. Stay here with a woman and work for me. Watch the field where the men are harvesting and follow along after the women. I have told the men not to lay a hand on you." So Boaz told the men not to lay a hand on Ruth. "And whenever you are thirsty, go and get a drink from water jars that the men have already filled." And so fourthly is godly relationships require godly masculinity. Godly relationships require godly masculinity. Boaz is a stud, okay? He's like the epitome of what it means to be a stud. He takes care of Ruth from the get-go. He takes care of Ruth. That's his focus. Taking care of her physical needs, taking care of her emotional needs, her mental needs, and her spiritual needs. Boaz says, I'm going to take care of this person. And so as a man, our responsibility is to take care of our girl. You know, most of you guys don't have a girl right now, but eventually you will. Your primary responsibility is to take care and provide for that girl. That's what it means to be a man. It doesn't mean that you're macho and can lift 225 pounds on bench press. That's not what it means. It doesn't mean you got 6 chest hairs, okay? That's not what it means to be a man, all right? What it means to be a man is to love and protect women. That's what it means. Specifically, eventually, your girlfriend or your spouse.
Done?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the 5th one is godly femininity, and what that looks like. In Ruth 2:14 through 16, right?
No,
No.
10 through 13.
Before it, 10 through 13. Then she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to him, "Why have I found favor in your eyes, that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner?" But Boaz answered her, "All that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told to me, and how you left your father and mother and your native land and came to the people that you did not know before. The Lord repay you for what you have done, and a full reward be given to you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." Then she said, "I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, for you have confronted me and spoken kindly to your servant, though I am not one of your servants." So the first part of that, like her bowing, just showed so much respect. And it's 2020. Feminist movement's going on. If you don't know what I'm talking about, women are trying to take over. They think they're better than men. It's great, whatever, but you need to have the respect. It literally says in the Bible that the man is the head of the household. And when you're dating, it's not necessarily that, but when you're married, it becomes that. And for her to show respect to someone that she wasn't even dating, she wasn't even married to, showed so much. And she wasn't demanding him to give her a job. She wasn't demanding more. She was literally very content with just following behind, and she was so thankful for that. What else was I going to say? And then she was tender towards him. She didn't question why his intentions negatively. She questioned them positively. She made the correlation that God was with him and for her and them being together. But then, on the contrary, Boaz realized the positive rapport she had with others. He heard that people spoke highly of her. They didn't speak poorly of her, didn't say bad things about her. Every person that he was in contact with, he questioned them and asked, and none of them had anything bad to say about her. And that's how we need to be. We need to make sure that we're being respectful and we're being honoring to those, and we're not slandering anybody else's name, because then it could come back and bite us and we could be slandered. And then she continually asked to work and serve him, continually doing the same thing, not to be promoted in any way to be actually one of his servants, but she was content with where she was at because she knew God was providing.
There's nothing that drives a man more nuts than a woman who disrespects him. Men crave respect. Women crave, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, they crave to feel protected. They crave to feel loved. And as a man, your primary responsibility to the woman is to protect and love her. Men crave respect. And as a woman, your job is to respect your man. And so it's interesting that that's the way God created us and what we crave, and that's the way that we're supposed to treat each other.
Yeah. And the 6th one is godly conversation. This one's probably my favorite because of the fact of, we're about to get into my anti-feminist movement. But in Ruth 2:14 through 16, it says, "At mealtime, Boaz said to her, 'Come over here and have some bread and dip it in the wine vinegar.' When she had sat down with her harvesters, he offered her some roasted grain. All she wanted had some left over, As she got up to glean, Boaz gave orders to his men, "Let her gather among the sheaves, and don't reprimand her. Even pull out some stalks for her from the bundles and leave them for her to pick up, and do not rebuke her." So, Boaz, he took the lead. It's 2020, feminist movement, going back to that. It's not our job as women to ask the men out. It's not. Boaz asked her to come eat with him. He provided for her, boys pay, and he literally kept it so pure he didn't push her into doing more. He didn't ask her to do anything else other than just eat with him, and he asked questions to get to know her. And then afterwards, he asked his men to continually provide for her. And he also didn't ask to, I had this in my head, but whatever. He wanted to know her intellectually, emotionally, her likes and dislikes in the background. If you read further into it, like in the book, it talks about the family history and stuff like that. Which I don't know if we're going to get into that later or not. But anyways, like when he found out the relationship between them and their family line, like he pursued her even more and ended up paying for her like dowry. And like he pursued her so hardcore that he paid another man so that this other man didn't have to marry her, because in Bible times, like if your husband dies, then you marry the next in your family bloodline. And if you don't have that, then you go to your extended family, and then you go into that. And he just pursued and pursued and pursued, and he did whatever it would take, no matter how long it took. And I mean, me and Michael don't have experience with waiting because like we got married like that.
Boaz, he took the initiative to talk, like she said. Listen, guys, pulling up to a girl's house, honking the horn, expecting her to walk out and get in your vehicle is not how you do a date.
Or text.
You get out of your vehicle, you go knock on the door, you have a face-to-face conversation with the parents. I know that's awkward. Trust me, I've been there, done that many times. You have a face-to-face conversation, and then you walk with her out to the car. That's what a man does, right? And then once you're in the car, you don't turn on the radio and ignore each other. Like that, you don't blare some music, practicing your dance moves or singing car karaoke. Actually talk and have a conversation. That girl wants to get to know your heart, and the only way she's going to be able to see your heart and know you as an individual is if you talk. You have to talk. You can't just be quiet, like me.
Michael's literally saying everything that he did, except he didn't honk his horn.
Whoa, no. I talked to your dad.
Yeah, but you turned music on, and we were very awkward. Like I am right now. Your turn.
Last one is godly relationships require the gospel. Boaz was what we call a kinsman redeemer. If you don't know what that is, basically we'll get into that more in the next couple weeks. But Boaz was like Ruth's financial, physical Jesus at the time. Ruth didn't know where she was going. She was basically an orphan. She was living with her mother-in-law, but she was basically on her own, according to the Bible times. And so there was a lot of things going on in her life that she was not doing well. And so Boaz steps into the picture as a indicator of what Jesus would do for us when Jesus comes in the New Testament. And so godly relationships require the gospel. Boaz was a redeemer for Ruth, which meant that he had the right relationship and the right resources to take care of her. While the book of Ruth is true and helpful for pre-marriage relationships such as dating, the book of Ruth is a clear picture of Jesus' redeeming relationship with his bride, and that's the church, us. And in the very beginning, God created man and woman in a marriage relationship. And so if God created a man and women in a marriage relationship at the very beginning, marriage is a pretty important deal. God said, the man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast his wife, and they shall become one flesh. Paul takes that same verse and says that it's a revealed mystery as to why God started everything off with marriage. Because ultimately, marriage is a picture of the flesh, eternal, loving relationship of Christ for the church. And so I want to leave you with a couple final thoughts on how to have a godly pre-marriage relationship. First one is, don't overdate. Jesus only has one bride. Jesus has one bride. There's one person that's meant for you. And so don't overdate. Don't be afraid to date, but don't overdate. Second, reflect the gospel. So guys, lovingly lead like Jesus would, and humbly follow like the church. Third, raise your requirements. Raise the bar. Don't settle. Don't settle for something that isn't exactly what you want in a person. A lot of you guys know Jonathan Ackland. Jonathan Ackland has still not had a girlfriend in a few years because he's got the bar set here and he's not lowering it. He understands what to raise his requirement. And so only date those that you feel actually fit your requirements. Have a list. Think about it. Say, this is my list. This is what I want in my spouse or my boyfriend or my girlfriend. And if they don't meet one of those, they're not the person.
Yeah, and don't think that they're going to change to meet that requirement.
Amen. They're not going to change.
Because they're not. Like, they can say they're going to change, but if there's no action following it, then just walk out the door. It's not worth your time.
Lastly, remember that you're taken, and because God has someone special set aside for you. There was a story I read recently in a book called Circle Maker, and this is about a couple who has a child. They're pregnant. They're getting ready to have their child, and as they're praying for their child before it's actually born, they had two names come to them as they were praying. They had a girl's name and a boy's name. And they ended up having a girl. And so they named it the girl's name. And they weren't sure why they had that guy's name. But 20-some years later, their daughter married a guy with that name. And so they had already been praying for her future spouse before he was even born. And so God has someone specific in mind for you. And don't settle. Understand that God has someone specific. Don't be like, well, what about so-and-so? Or what about so-and-so? Have that bar set high and remember that you're already taken by somebody. You may not know that person yet, but that person is who you belong to. And if you realize that you're already taken, if you know that, hey, there's somebody out there that's already for me, you're going to do your best to pray for that person. You're going to do your best to wait for that person sexually. You're going to do best. You're going to pursue that person. That's going to be your standard. And so remember that there is somebody specific in mind that God has for you. You got anything else?
No.
All right, cool. Well, that's all we got for tonight. Like I said, we'll be back here the next couple weeks talking more about relationships. Let me pray for us, and then I'll let you guys go. Or do you want to pray?
You already said you were.
Okay, I will. Heavenly Father, God, we just come before you, and Lord, we thank you for this opportunity. God, I know we've only been married for almost 4 years, and God, we don't have a whole lot of experience. But God, I thank you for just giving us the wisdom and the direction that you've given us, and that we can impart some of that to these students. God, Lord, I pray that these students would take this, God, and they would not just let it go in one ear and out the other, but God, that they would actually apply it to their lives. God, that they would realize that there is someone special out there for them. They might not know that person yet. They might not even meet that person for another 10 years. But God, I pray that they would remember there is somebody special for each and every one of them that's out there. And so I would encourage, God, that you would just put it on their heart to wait for that person. God, to pray for that person. There is so much power in prayer. If we could only see what you're doing when we're praying, we would never cease to pray. And God, I pray that we would pray, that these students would pray for their future spouse. God, I just ask that you would provide that to them at the right time. God, I pray that they would have faith and obedience to your word and your truth, God. I pray this in your name, Father. Amen.